Our next presenter is Skye Allen, who is the founder and director of Arcadia Aquatic, and also the creator of these fantastic work of arts with native plants here. And Arcadia Aquatic is a business providing services in local, low-impact, fresh and dried flowers and foliage. Before starting Arcadia Aquatic, Skye has also been part of strategic urban design. So in herself and all through her experiences, she brings systems thinking and also big picture thinking to lots of various projects. She's very much about joining the dots between data, evidence, future trends, and compelling communication with stakeholders, where there's a lot of areas of continual interest. This is just a little bit off of your own bio, but with a bowerbird approach, Skye has moved around, sticking her nose in various places and gathering diverse collections of gems of experience, knowledge, and also tough lessons. So thank you very much for interweaving the biophilic elements of your own story.
Hi everybody, so I'm going to give you a 7-minute tour of the world of Arcadia Aquatic. Subtitle, Confessions of a Slightly Jaded Strategic Urban Designer Who's Become Slightly Obsessed with the Sex Organs of Plants. So this practice obviously works with flora. So the biophilia is intrinsic. I say that nature is the artist, I'm just the curator and the arranger of the content. So in developing my practice, some fundamentals were really important to me, moving from being part of big organisations, often in local and state government, where there's many players, into a world where I was setting the practice, I was setting the values. So for me, everything I work with comes from within 150 kilometres of Adelaide. And that's actually really empowering because it's part of setting, I guess, a really strong context for my work. Basically, if I can't get there and back with my electric car, it wasn't going to be part of the game. And so that's really exciting because actually you then look in a really interesting way at what is within that 150 kilometres of Adelaide. And just like I think South Australians and people within the metro area are very aware of the food and wine locavore experience that we have, equally we can have just as amazing locavore experience of the timbers that we use in our furniture or our buildings, but equally the flowers that we use to commemorate people we love, to celebrate events. So that was really important for me. The other big element is to say that the material that I work with will be natural. It will be dried, but it won't be bleached, it won't be dyed, it won't have weird chemicals sprayed on it. And so it stays natural and it can end up in your compost at the end of a process. So those were kind of the fundamentals that I set for myself, which are a direct response to some of the more current trends that are happening in mainstream floristry, which trends come and go in all of our practices and professions and areas we work in. But the big challenge that I have is that there's a lack of transparency in that world. So for me, it was about how can I help raise the conversation and awareness, but in a positive way. So rather than just pointing the finger at a lot of the mainstream practices, how can I offer an alternative? And a big part of offering an alternative and having a new conversation is about sea flora. So this piece is created through natural coloured sea flora, captured at different points in time depending on how it's reacted to the sun, and then dried. And so the colours that we have in our local sea flora that ends up on our beaches is amazing. And this is a space, again, I think that we can explore in terms of what are new industries or new ways of working with materials that can be sustainable and be responsible for how we might use local materials. But equally, why would we bring in weird coloured pink stuff that's been dyed and bleached in other parts of the world if we actually have an alternative option to get those same colours locally. And then I guess for me as well, it is about how can I work with locally sourced material to tell stories and respond to briefs from clients about what it is to be in South Australia and Australia. But equally for me, it's not just about endemic or indigenous plants to our area. It's as much about acknowledging and interpreting the layers of colonial history, why there are so many olive trees all throughout the hills. Some of the weeds that are through my property at Belair, they're equally a part of the conversation about what is this place now, as celebrating the fact that we have, amazing kangaroo grass still growing in our parklands, and there's certain places, secret places, where I can source Sturt Desert pea that are being grown in Adelaide to reflect what's happening in places like the far north of South Australia. So this is what I was viscerally reacting to. And it's not to be incredibly critical of the industry. This is, as we talked about, and as Mauricio said, supply chains and economies of scales that happen in all of the different parts of the world that we interact with. The big difference I feel with floristry is, unlike when you go and buy your fruit at the supermarket, or even when you go and buy your homewares, where it will tell you which country it's made in, you can't walk into most florists and see, okay, that's 70% South Australian grown, or that's 60% Australian grown. And often the florists might not know themselves because of the way the supply chains move through wholesalers. But this is the normal part of the process. So the amount of single-use plastic that will go through your pretty bunch of flowers that you get wrapped in nice brown paper is quite scary. So I can't shop at all at the wholesale markets just because I don't want to interact with that process. Again, that's just something that evolves out of everyone kind of using normalized parts of the system. But until there's kind of questions about what is the alternative, or customers asking for different things, this part of the process is probably going to keep going. So that for me was quite an interesting thing around biophilia, is even pretty soft green things like flowers can have quite hidden concerns, and cold storage supply chains that come from Ecuador and China in terms of roses, that I think, again, providing people with information means that they're going to be able to make some more informed choices. So coming back to the work that I'm trying to slowly build, this was a dream commission for me, working with Williams Burton Leopardi and the restaurant Botanic, the Botanic Gardens, which has recently had an amazing reno and a new menu. So lucky for me, you can't take outside plant material into the gardens for biosecurity. So with much supervision from the curators, the horticultural curators, I am allowed to source from within the gardens, dry, and then install. And again, we're kind of working through how this installation will subtly evolve to reflect the seasons of the garden, and then how the chefs are interpreting those in their menu. So that's really exciting that more and more, I think a lot of different types of venues are starting to think about who are they asking to do what work. And this was something that I did, for a networking event. So I think for me, the challenge is to say, I can give you the look and feel that you might be getting from more traditional mainstream florists, but I can give it to you using things that have come from within 100 Ks of Adelaide. And quite frankly, most of my stuff comes from within 30 Ks. So that's been my journey in terms of, I guess, pushing myself to fill a space that I couldn't find anyone else quite doing. There's lots of florists out there doing amazing stuff, and a lot of growers doing amazing stuff. But for whatever reason, they either don't talk about it, or perhaps they feel that occasionally they'll still use things from Queensland or China, and so they might not be as comfortable sort of pushing the local material. And again, for me, what I get most excited about is being able to work with people from, I guess, my professional background in architecture and landscape architecture, and do that collaborative brief work and responding to their spaces. And celebrating Australia and layering in that conversation about what is our place, what are our stories. Our Christmas is the beach, and how those things become part of us celebrating our particular experience, and so that you can feel that this Christmas tree can probably only be from the southeastern little slither of Australia because of the type of mix of material that are in there. And equally, you can kind of hit some of the the trends and the briefs that the kiddies on Instagram want around. I want it to look white and bleachy, or I want it to be like pops of fluoro colour. So for me, it's equally about, I guess, some of the natural storytelling that resonates with me, but equally about how can we talk to perhaps people who aren't having the conversation that we're having, but weave into that the opportunity for them to access things that are truly local and part of this place that they're living in. Thank you.